Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Soulganize Your Life podcast. And I noticed that the more that I'm soulganizing my life, the more happy I have been as a human on this crazy planet. And the outer circumstances of our lives stimulate our inner experience in two distinct ways. And as a psychotherapist, the first way I would call the ego, which is this very separate sense of self that's sort of distorted, if not completely distorted, about reality. And then there's the divine soul connection to all that is. And so, why is it important to know the difference? Well, I think it's very important. And that's where our guests come in because they help us relate to this inner conflict that we do have both a separate sense of self and we also have a divine soul. And they help us integrate these two perspectives into one full human experience. And of course, we can't do that if we haven't had this crazy experience ourselves and have started to figure out, yeah, I definitely have an ego. I definitely had a separate sense of self. And then I had something that helped me wake up to my soul and all that is in whatever form that took. And I was talking to Robin, who is our guest today before we hit record. And man, has she had a lot of life experience to break down. And I don't even know how to introduce her because she's currently a Reiki and prana healing practitioner, right? But before that, she was just telling me before we hit record that she had been a sensitive since she was a child in the 60s. So, and a lot of people can probably relate to that and didn't know what to call it. And so I'd love for you just to start with, how you developed as a child. Like, what was that like to feel sensitive? You were telling me the story about the card deck, and I just want you to tell that on the record.
So I had a very wise woman ask me, what is the one thing that you do that is uniquely yours? It was more in the setting of a business. It was a conference. And she's like, I think you guys should do a business on your relationship because I've been with my spouse, Maria, for 35 years. And she said, you guys are amazing and you would help so many people. And I'm like, no, that's medicine. You got to have things for you. But I never talked about the fact that as long as I can remember, I've been sensitive to energy. It was a bit like being gay for me. I'm gay and you just didn't talk about it. Locked you up back in the 60s.
Got you. Yeah.
But as a kid, I mean, we played cards a lot because we didn't have computers and things like that.
Yeah.
And so one day I was playing solitaire, I don't know, some kind of card game with some friends. And I ran my hand over a deck of cards. We had them laying face down. We were trying to guess if we could see what card was what. And I was really good at it. I could tell you every single time where the ace was, where the king was, like a high card. Ace, king, queen, or jack, because my hands felt hot.
Okay, and so that's how you determine that.
Right.
I was going to ask you, how did you know? Did you see the picture in your head, but you actually felt it in your hands?
Yeah, it felt hot.
Common for Reiki, right? Reiki people feel.
Yeah, I mean, and this was 1960 something, so I wouldn't have known anything about that. It wasn't known commonly among people, although Reiki's been in the States since 1940 something because of Mrs. Takata.
Yeah. But so when you say you were sensitive, did you have a sense that you were a spiritual being as a kid?
I think so, because I took myself to church. Like, my father was not religious and my mom has always been spiritual, but we weren't as a family going to church. And there was a church about 9 blocks from where I was living, grew up. And I started going when I was 5. I would just walk myself to church.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Presbyterian church. And I remember, I'm Catholic now, but Protestant, the whole big thing was accepting Christ as your savior. And I remember they led an exercise if you wanted to accept Christ as your savior. And I did the prayer. And I remember I had this feeling it was like warm milk filling me.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty intense. And I was about 5.
Wow.
So I knew pretty early on that there was creator, a spirit of some kind. And I didn't have an easy childhood. No one in my family did. It was tough. My dad served in the war, and I think he came home with a lot of damage from World
Wow.
War II. And this was like 1961, 62, and the war had only ended 15 years earlier. So I don't think he was very happy,
Wow.
nor really knew how to deal with it. And so
Well,
that impacted the family pretty heavily.
that's great that you already at such a young age had a sense of your spiritual self. But I also think that we create an ego, which is in response to surviving our childhood,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, how did you survive an unhappy father?
I basically stayed out of his way, and I spent a lot of time by myself because I didn't really have any childhood friends until I was about 7. There was just no one on my street to play with.
Okay.
And so I just spent a lot of time with Robin. And when I got old enough to learn how to read, Lord of the Rings was my refuge.
Wow.
And if it was tense and I didn't want to be there, I could walk my 9 blocks to my church and go sit on the steps.
Wow. So
And
you really
actually,
found comfort.
when I became Catholic in my 20s, that was a profoundness because I could go in the church and sit
Hmm.
because there's the Eucharist, and I always knew that God was home.
Wow.
And so, like when I walk into a Catholic church, there's a feeling of a presence that I don't
Yes.
get in Protestant churches, and it doesn't mean they're less holy. It's just different.
Yes. And so it almost sounds like you didn't really develop a sense of yourself, a separate sense of yourself of this is what I need to do to be successful. It was more like you were just going where you would feel peace.
Yeah, I mean, in alcoholic families, everyone takes on a different role, and so mine was the responsible one. And I think everybody just did the best they could, and I got counseling in my 20s to sort of deal with my stuff. And I went
Yeah.
through a 12-step program for adult children of alcoholics because it was pointed out to me that I maybe had some issues that I'm like, I'm fine. What do you mean? What's the problem? I was kind of
Mhm.
pissed off. But eventually I realized, oh, my family's from Mars. I learned things that are not healthy. I better clean this up. So I'm very grateful because it helped me get healthy at a young age and not make the same mistakes that a lot of people make. I'm fortunate. I never became addicted or had any of those issues to deal with. I just had to figure out how to be healthy and what that meant and how to be happy.
Yeah. So you said one of the roles you took on, which I would say maybe is attached to the ego, right, is the responsible one. How did that play out in your adult life and pursuit of success?
Well, I started working in entertainment at a very young age, and I just worked all the time, basically.
What was your job?
And I've worked everywhere. I think I've worked for every facility in Hollywood. It's technical, all technical stuff.
Okay.
And I've spent the better part of 40 years working in entertainment, actually.
Wow. That could be a whole other podcast. I'm sure you have lots
Yeah,
to
that's a whole other podcast.
say.
But I think being the responsible one, really, in terms of like everybody has a role: comedian, black sheep. Um,
Yeah.
some people typically, because of the nature of alcoholism, it's like what you learn is normal, as you know. So you sort of look for that in other people, and that's how the illness continues.
Yes.
And so I picked an unhealthy relationship early on and then realized one day that I wasn't happy and ended that and really worked hard to get healthy and chose my spouse of 35 years and feel really blessed and
Yeah.
learned how to really be loved and that if somebody got angry, they weren't going to leave
Mm,
emotionally and,
hmm.
just sort of really how to be an adult.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, I'm from Chicago, so I don't know anything about Hollywood, but it seems like you might lose a sense of your spiritual self while working there, but maybe not. Was that
It
an
really
issue for you?
depends. If you're talent, like if you want to be an actor, that's a whole other because you're total, all the time you're judged on your appearance.
Yes.
And I was a technician, so I was in a little dark room, so I didn't have to deal with that.
Okay. And you
And
didn't feel like you fell into any sort of egoic, yeah, you were
no,
just,
no,
yeah.
no. I mean, I was very intentional about the kind of work that I did. I was just trying to be successful in it's a very tough industry, and be successful and be good at it and learn as many skills as I could. So it was really much more about learning how to fit in, learning to keep my mouth shut if I was angry, you know, and if you were angry, go curse in a little dark room somewhere. And really, I mean, you just work all the time and learning how to deal with the egos, because, like in any industry, there are a lot of egos, and how to survive that and be calm under stressful circumstances. And I think really just the tools for being a successful human being.
Yeah. So when I talk to people about their ego development, it's interesting when you just said dealing with other egos, because I really very rarely ask anybody about how do you, as a spiritual person in that business, how did you navigate all those egos? Because you must have had a sense.
Oh, I got fired a lot. I mean, I started freelancing because I'm like, this is baloney. I'd like to work. And then I finally, because I was young. I mean, you're taught, you go, you work for a company for 40 years, and then you die. And
Yeah.
entertainment's not like that. It's like you keep a job in entertainment for more than a year, especially back in the 80s. It was like, wow, you're doing really well. And
Mm,
it would make me angry because I'm like, I don't deserve to be treated that way. And
mm.
eventually you just learn how to suck it up, do your job, keep your head down, and stand up when it's important. I quit a job because I felt like they were dishonest, and I just quit. And the owner of the company is like, "You don't even have a job to go to," and I'm like, "Unemployment's better than
Wow.
this."
Well, and it's interesting because, we often get influenced by other egos and it keeps us in a space of suffering. But it sounds like because of your intense spiritual connection, you would rarely let that happen to you.
You know, I think I've always known, as far back as I can remember, that I was loved at a
Wow.
certain level. And I didn't take the road that many in my family took, trying to survive the pain of our family upbringing. And I think it's that understanding that saved me.
Yeah. And speaking of saving, you mentioned already when we weren't recording how many times you literally have been saved from
Yes.
your death. Yeah. And that what a gift to know that this isn't everything, right? And that you've brought so much humor to that. But you've had what, 6 encounters?
6 or 7. I've kind of lost track. I know at least 3 before the age of 15. I was in near fatal with my mom. It was, I think, 1971, so I was about 8. A drunk driver hit us, took out the front end of a 62 Bel Air, and I should have gone through the windshield because, like, who wore seatbelts in the 70s? Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then at least 2 to 3 more accidents where I was not a driver by the time I was 15. And then as an adult, um, I was in a near fatal accident in 2009 where I should have died. I hit the freeway at 60 miles an hour and rolled about 100 feet. And I was pretty sure I was going to die. I was
Wow.
actually convinced I was going to die
So
because that was the moment.
so all these times that you are in near death, you are not pursuing prana or Reiki healing, right? You were
No,
probably.
this is before. I've only been a Reiki master for about a year, and I became a Reiki practitioner in 2022.
Yeah. So it's interesting because as spiritual as you are, and then you're having these near death experiences, you're you're not quite jolted yet into following an alternative healing path, but you're healing. You're still healing, like you've healed from all these things. And then it took one big event recently, right, for you to finally jump into that extraordinary healing space. And that was what?
Well, in 2020, I became diagnosed with breast cancer. And at the time, I was working as a commercial drone pilot doing fire mitigation for several of the large utility companies
Wow.
to prevent like the big fires we're having in California right now.
Wow.
And I loved it. I mean, we were doing transmission and distribution up north, the big transmission lines. So it's hiking mountains, which was amazing because you're out in nature
Wow.
and streams, and you see the hawks out there. And so I was diagnosed and had to come south to start my treatment. And after about a year, I realized I wasn't going to be going back to work anytime soon.
Mm.
And so I've been around Native American elders for a very long time. I'm familiar with Native American spirituality and healing. I've had doctoring. And so that was a modality that I've been familiar with for a very long time. And I had someone ask me in 2019, what's one thing that you're uniquely suited to in terms of that you can do? And from there, we could build a business. And at the time, my spouse and I attended this conference, and everyone there was like, you guys should do a business based on your relationship. And I'm like, no. I'll tell you how we met. That's a great story. It's profound. There's a lot of love there, but that's not a business.
Mm.
I didn't talk about the fact that I've been sensitive to energy my whole life. I just didn't really want to talk about it. 2 years passed, and through a series of circumstances, I began to realize that, and I was getting Reiki at this point because I wanted some energy work, and I wanted a female practitioner because I wanted a different energy.
Mm.
And I asked my Reiki master, I said, look, there's this thing. When people are sick, I can feel where they're sick. My hands get hot. And sometimes I get a picture in my head. And you can't just go around telling people that because they're going to lock you up. And, go see your doctor. Don't be a dumbass. Go see your doctor. But what is this? And she said, oh, you're an energy carrier. And I'm like, oh, well, that would have been nice to know in like 1965. That would have been great. So she said, have you ever thought about becoming a Reiki practitioner? I'm like, no, nope, not going there. And through a series of circumstances, I finally realized one day that I was probably never going to go back to work the way that I've been doing for the last 40 years. And that maybe this was really the road I was supposed to be on at this point in my life.
I'd say so.
I became a Reiki practitioner, and just level 1, which is you work on yourself. And I did that for a year because I'm intending to beat cancer. And I knew that energy medicine is absolutely a way you can get cancer to leave.
Yes.
And go see your doctor, be smart. But in addition, it's a good modality. And then after about a year, it finally occurred to me that maybe this is what I should do. So I spoke with my Reiki master about it and became a level 2. And then she's like, well, you really should become a Reiki master, if she knows. And at the same time, I learned about pranic healing because I had attended the Tony Robbins event virtually. I was introduced to Master Stephen Coe, who has taught the United States Army, Google, Microsoft, and so on and so forth. And I learned he was going to be in my area last April, and I'm like, I need to go. And so I do them both. I do them separately as far as my work, but they really integrate well together.
Yeah.
And so that began the journey I'm on right now.
So how do you, when you think about, you've always been sensitive, you've always felt connected to spirit, and all of these tragic, accents or diagnoses, why do you think it was that? What was it about that finally pushed you towards what it sounds like you've been meant to do your whole life? I think
it was called the 4x8 method.
Hit over the head?
Yeah, I think so. So I had this accident in 2009. 3 months later, we were hit by a drunk driver, almost head on.
That's crazy.
3 years after that, we had a house fire, and they told us that if we'd been in the house another 5 minutes, the main beam would have collapsed in on us. So we rebuilt. So I'm very empathetic with the California fire victims.
Oh, I bet.
I've
Yeah.
been through it. Uh, all I had left was my phone, and I discovered an app where you could do like Celtic harp, and so I wrote an album. And I
Wow.
began pursuing that, and so I released an album in 2015 because it was like, hey, you can do it. Can't be that hard. So I did that. I workshopped a novel in New York. I went through the Iowa Writers Program in 2015 and 2016 while continuing to work in entertainment. And I was a technical director for a bunch of years. When I got my diagnosis and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go back to work, I was, of course, put on disability and then transitioned to long-term disability. And I had a case for SSDI. And I lost a hearing. And I'm like, I was really counting on having that because I knew that I couldn't do regular work because of the medication and stuff. I think emotionally, I sat down on the road and cried for a while, like a kid.
Wow.
And then I just had the feeling. I met someone in San Diego. And I've been working with crystals pretty much my whole life. I really am. I'm sensitive to them. And I met a man named Frank in San Diego on the beach. And I'm really picky about where I'll go buy crystals. Like, to me, they're relatives. Like the Cherokee elders work with crystals. You can't even go near crystals for a very long time until you learn how to use them because they have a lot of power.
They sure do.
And so I felt called to buy certain crystals and bring them home. And I realized now that I was slowly building up the things that I needed for practice.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of chronic understanding, as a breast cancer patient, I shouldn't be around crystals because they can overactivate your basic chakra, which is where most cancers come from. But I think genetically I'm also Cherokee. I mean, that's like what I can actually prove. And like genetically, I think I'm designed to work with them because they seem to be suppressing my cancer, not actually overactivating them. So I have a slight differentiation personally between myself and what chronic healing teaches. But anyways, I met a man named Frank, and over the course of that weekend, I met his friend, Jonathan, who I was like his second client ever, and he worked with metaphysical energy, and he said, I'd like to give you some energy. And he said, would you be open to it? I'm like, sure, absolutely. Thank you. I've been around a lot of medicine people. I understand that. I mean, the form is different, but it's the same. I went down the next weekend to San Diego to visit my spouse because she was working there. I went to go see Frank because I knew every weekend he set up his little shop on the beach there. And Frank was distressed, and it turned out his friend had died. But we found that out over the course of the weekend. And so I was led to understand that I needed to move some energy. And the way that I move energy, I would say, is more like the movements of Qigong, although I've never done it. That was just what I was intuitively called to do. And because I knew Frank was sensitive, I knew somehow that this would help him.
Wow.
And it was that, and I met with an elder a few months later. We just happened to meet in San Diego, Native American elder. And I was able to tell her some things that it just sort of fell out of my mouth, and it helped her. And I came home, and I was sitting in my office speaking with my Reiki master about what had happened and how I felt about it. And I looked up, and there were wings on my ceiling, angel wings.
Wow.
I'd have to show you the pictures. And I'm like, I know this is coming from somewhere.
Yes.
I've sat in this office every day for 4 years. And I said, do you think it's maybe a sign? And she laughed. And but it was really, it was a combination of I'd lost my disability hearing that I'd been fighting for 3 years.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I'm too sick to go work.
Well,
And
I see how you said it
working.
was a 4x8 over the head because I mean
Yeah,
you
I think it
literally,
was. I mean,
yeah.
my cancer moved in 2022, and so I became stage 4 at that point, and that was actually I ended up ultimately winning my disability hearing after like another almost 2 years. But it was
Wow.
really the moment when I was told no, and I can't work because the medication makes me ill. And meeting with Frank and meeting with this Native American elder, that I began to go, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I
Maybe you
plan to
didn't
go
need
be
to
a
have all
pilot
those
again,
crashes.
and I can't go do that.
Maybe you didn't need to have all those crashes, but it sounds like
Well,
eventually.
I don't know. I think I had a sense one day. I was driving home from San Diego, and I had I won't say vision, but I just had a picture of walking into the treatment area at the hospital I go to and seeing cancer as a darkness and watching it recede as I walked in.
Wow.
And what I heard in my head was, Robin, you make cancer afraid. And I went, but it's not just me, it's everyone who brings light.
I love it.
It's
Wow, that's
everyone.
awesome. And
And
one of the things you said when we were talking before we were recording, you said this isn't the end of my story. And I think that this is amazing to think that this is going to be a continuation of your story where you can walk in a room and literally your light will push back the darkness, just like if you flip on a light switch, right? All the darkness disappears. It's not it's not something you have to work at. It's just flicking the switch, and it sounds like you've trained yourself enough and so that you can harness that and believe in it. But you've had this since you were 5 at least, or born with it, and it's all
well,
coming full circle now.
my name literally in Old English means bright fame.
Mm,
And I believe that this is everyone's journey. I'm not anything special. I'm just me. Like,
right.
I was talking to a priest about this, someone I really respected, and Father Marty said, "Look, the difference between you and a Mother Teresa is we're all candles, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Mother Teresa's might be the big holy candle that you use on Easter
Yes.
Vigil,
Yeah.
but everyone, like on Easter Vigil, all the lights are out. Everyone has a candle.
Yes.
Everyone is emitting the same amount of light. It's just her
Yep.
candle's bigger, or
Right.
Gandhi, or Buddha, or
That's
Christ."
right. Yeah. And to
And
your point, I don't think you're special either.
no, absolutely not. I just
And I
laugh.
don't think I'm special either. I think we
I
are
mean,
all
we are
candles,
special
like you
because
said.
we all have a job, right? And
Yes. Yes.
when I got my cancer diagnosis, I was very clear that this was not going to be the end of my story.
I love it. We
It's
shouldn't
not.
laugh.
It's not a belief. It's just not.
Well, I always say the ego believes and the soul knows. So I think your soul knows this is not the end of your story. And your
Well,
soul has been trying to, have you come out of the closet, so to speak.
yeah. Well, there was the first coming out. I was
Yes.
25, and here I am. So it took a while.
So
Look, we're all
go ahead.
here for something, right?
We are.
And the way that pranic healing talks about it, so your higher mind is in your crown, and your physical body, that's your basic chakra, your sex chakra, the lower chakras. They both have their own understanding. You just got to get them working together.
Nice.
And so the illnesses come in because we get dirty energy. It just gets trapped. But it all starts out here in your etheric body, and it just works its way in. And that's whether it's, Ayurvedic medicine or acupuncture, Reiki, pranic healing, any of the other modalities. I was talking to my doctor, as I told you before, and explaining pranic healing because people are like, Gesundheit, what's pranic healing? And I said, if you think about it, we all know that we're energy. That's science. Your eyes interpret electrical impulses to the brain. So we have blood vessels, we get cholesterol, meaning your blood vessels are dirty, in essence. We have energy lines, we call them meridians, and all of the healing arts work on the energy lines to clean out the diseased energy. And it's just the techniques for doing it. Don't get hung up on the hows. And you need both. You need the physical healing and you need the energetic cleaning, and the two work together.
That's right. And I think, you did counseling as well, and we can help you process a lot of the intellectual, egoic baggage that you are also having about all these experiences. And I will say that you don't just go one time and it's done. I know, to my own Reiki master, I've been going for like 6 years, and it's a choice. It's a lifestyle choice to like integrate all these different modalities. Like you said, I still go to my doctor, and I believe in all these other different healings. This is just what I'm following and what I'm offering. And you know that you can move energy. You've been able to sense it since you were a kid. And so, is there an ideal person that you would like to work with now that you are a healer, and how would they find you?
Well, I have a website. You can book a session at risingwavehealing.com. As far as that, I'm on Google and Yelp as far as those kind of things. Everyone says you have to have a client avatar and narrow your target down and all of that. Yeah. And I'm like, look, I just want to work with people that are spiritual. I don't really care if they're men or women. I speak geek really well. So if you understand geek, I'm your person. Somebody with a sense of humor, somebody that's nice and decent. And I don't really do extremes very well. So I don't really resonate well with people that are very extreme one way or the other. I think more middle of the road, like a little common sense. So
yeah,
people that are nice and decent, that's really it. And I think that relatives find you that you're meant to work with.
That's right. I believe that for sure. Just like how I'm finding people to come on this podcast randomly that don't know me. It's all divine.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, narrow my target audience down and all of those good things. So because you can't help everyone, obviously.
Yeah, and that's why we need more of us, and that's how I think we need more of these conversations, so people will find you, and that you will be you will be able to meet the people that you're supposed to meet. And I really appreciate your being on the podcast and telling this story. And I really hope that people come and find you. It's risingwavehealing.com.
The only thing I would actually really say to anybody, okay, there's 500 things they don't tell you about breast cancer. Like if you go to the store, get a cart. Don't be a dumbass. Get a cart, because I've had a mastectomy and you lose your package holder. I'm just going to tell you, girls, you lose the built-in package holder. So get a cart. Because I discovered this one day. I went to the store to go get one thing, and we all know as women, you pick up, oh, I need some cat food. Oh, I need tomato juice. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. Well, now I'm standing in line, and things begin to slide across my chest, which literally felt like black ice. I swear to God, the devil was dancing on black ice on my chest. The next thing, the tomato juice went boom. I'm like, this is what it's like to break your water in a store. Now I understand.
Oh my God.
Don't be a dumbass, get a cart. So number one, that's the really important thing they don't tell you. And number two, you gotta laugh.
Yes.
Because when I was diagnosed, my brother, who's a medicine person, said to me, I made a joke, and he's like, so this is the way that you've chosen to deal with it, as I continued to tell jokes. And I'm like, yes. This is how, when my doctor told me I had stage 4 cancer, I laughed.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and I said, it's funny, because I began thinking about all the times that I'd been in these accidents and I should have died. They told me in 2009 I was never going to walk again.
Wow.
I walked just fine. They said, you're never going to use your left arm again.
There it is.
And I just laughed, because I'm like, no, I don't accept that. So the end of that is you get what you allow.
Yeah. And I think, a person who doesn't accept whatever limiting beliefs they've heard from maybe just traditional medicine sound like a good client for you, right? That are willing to not accept that and come and try something and hopefully joke with you and geek out.
Well, I do speak geek very well. I was Penny from the Big Bang. I just was not as cool. I hung around all the really smart people, Caltech and JPL. Laughter is a medicine. And
Absolutely.
laughter chases out the darkness. And the more awful things they tell me, the more jokes I tell, because it makes me feel better. And if
Yeah.
I can make myself laugh, I'm good. Then I got it. If I can't
Well,
laugh at it, I'm screwed.
Well, you've been inspiring on the podcast. I'm assuming you're very inspiring in person, especially if, you're being able to walk into a cancer room and help dispel the darkness. So thank you for what you're doing, and that you finally came around to being a healer after all these years. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben.
All right. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much.